Relationships, whether it's romantic, platonic, or professional, there's one trait that separates the ones who thrive from the ones who merely survive. It's not intelligence, not success, not charm. It's emotional intelligence. And those who have it, they don't just navigate relationships, they elevate them. Emotionally intelligent people don't walk into conversations with the goal of being right. They walk in with the goal of understanding. Because they know that when people feel understood, they stop defending and start connecting. They listen without interrupting. They ask questions without judgment. And they're not afraid to say, "Help me understand how you're feeling." That's where trust begins. That's where love deepens. They don't just communicate what happened. They share how it made them feel. They say things like, "I felt hurt when you didn't call," instead of, "You never care." They choose words that build bridges, not walls. They know that expressing emotion isn't about being dramatic. It's about being honest. And when we're honest with each other, we give our relationships a chance to breathe and grow. When tension rises, they don't explode. They don't withdraw. They pause. They breathe. They respond. Because they've learned that one impulsive reaction can undo days, weeks, even years of love. So instead of trying to win the argument, they aim to protect the connection. They know the real victory in relationships isn't about being right, it's about being kind. Boundaries are not barriers, they're acts of love. Emotionally intelligent people set them with clarity and courage, not to shut people out, but to stay whole within themselves. They've learned that saying no to something unhealthy is saying yes to a healthier future. They don't apologize for protecting their energy, their values, or their peace. And when they mess up, and they do, they own it. They don't hide behind excuses or deflect the blame. They lean into accountability. They say, "I was wrong, I hurt you, and I'm sorry." Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Because the moment we stop hiding is the moment we start healing. But perhaps the most powerful thing emotionally intelligent people do is this: they grow with their partner, not against them. They don't see love as a project or a power struggle. They don't try to mold someone into who they wish they were. They support them in becoming who they're meant to be. They know that a great relationship isn't about perfection, it's about progress. It's about growing side by side, cheering each other on, and rising together. Because in the end, emotional intelligence isn't just something you bring into a relationship, it's something that shapes the relationship. It's not about knowing all the answers. It's about showing up curious, open, and willing to do the work. In every relationship, there's a moment where we hit a wall. We feel misunderstood, unheard, maybe even unseen. And the instinct in that moment is to speak louder, argue harder, or retreat altogether. But emotionally intelligent people do something different. They pause. They shift their focus away from being understood, and instead, they lean into understanding. They understand something most people forget. People don't want to be fixed, they want to be heard. When someone is upset, confused, or distant, it's easy to assume they're overreacting or being unfair. But emotionally intelligent people ask themselves a different question. What is this person really trying to say? What pain are they carrying that I don't see yet? Because underneath every complaint is usually a deeper fear. Behind every outburst, there's often a wound. Emotionally intelligent people don't just react to the surface. They listen for what's underneath. That kind of listening is rare. It's the kind of listening that says, I'm not here to win. I'm here to connect. This mindset changes everything. When two people argue and both are focused on being right, no one wins. It becomes a battle of egos, a tug of war where the rope eventually snaps. But when at least one person says, tell me more, help me understand where you're coming from, the dynamic shifts from conflict to compassion. And that's when resolution becomes possible. Think about the relationships you admire most. The ones that last, the ones that feel safe and supportive. They aren't built on people always agreeing. They're built on people making the effort to understand each other, especially when it's hard. It takes strength to put your perspective aside and enter someone else's world. Not to change them, not to correct them, but simply to sit beside them in their truth for a moment. Emotionally intelligent people know that this doesn't make you weak, it makes you strong. Because it takes real maturity to stay present in a conversation that challenges your own beliefs or stirs your own emotions. It takes self-awareness to realize this moment isn't about me, it's about them. And maybe if I stop trying to defend myself, I can actually show up for them. This approach builds trust. It says to the other person, you matter to me. Your voice matters to me, even if I don't fully agree. And the incredible thing is, once someone feels truly heard, they usually become far more open to hearing you in return. Understanding creates space. It softens defenses. It opens the door to authentic dialogue where both people can be seen, not just argued with. It's not easy. It means letting go of the need to be right. It means embracing patience over pride. But emotionally intelligent people aren't interested in winning a relationship conversation. They're interested in making it stronger. And they've learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can say in a moment of tension is, help me understand what you need right now. Because that one question, asked with sincerity, can break cycles of miscommunication, melt walls of frustration, and remind the other person that they're not alone, that they're valued, that they're worth understanding. And when you do that consistently, when you build a habit of understanding first, you don't just create better conversations, you create safer relationships, more resilient ones, the kind of relationships that don't crumble when tested, but deepen, the kind of relationships where both people can thrive because they know they'll be met with empathy, not judgment. In relationships, words are powerful, but what truly connects us is how we use them. Emotionally intelligent people understand this deeply. They know that facts may inform, but feelings transform. That's why they don't just say what happened, they say how it made them feel. Most people, when they communicate, stay on the surface. They talk about events, timelines, behaviors. You didn't text me back. You were late again. You forgot what I said. Those are facts. They're real, but they don't carry the full weight of the experience. They don't tell the story of what's really going on beneath the surface. And that's where misunderstandings grow. Emotionally intelligent people take a different route. They go deeper. They say things like, when I didn't hear from you, I felt ignored. Or, when you arrived late, I felt like I wasn't a priority. It's not about blaming. It's about owning their own emotional experience and inviting the other person into it. This level of honesty builds connection because it shifts the focus from accusation to expression. It's not about pointing fingers. It's about opening a window into your heart. And that kind of vulnerability isn't weakness. It's courage. It says, I trust you enough to show you who I really am. Here's the truth. People can argue with facts. They can say, that's not what happened. They can push back, deny, or deflect. But it's much harder to argue with a feeling. You can't tell someone they didn't feel ignored or disappointed. You may not agree with why they felt that way, but the feeling itself is valid. And when someone shares a feeling with you, they're not asking you to solve it. They're asking you to see it. That's what emotionally intelligent people do so well. They don't just express feelings. They create space for feelings to be expressed. They make it safe to say, I'm hurt, I'm scared, I'm overwhelmed, without fear of being dismissed or judged. And because they do this consistently, the people around them start doing the same. The relationship becomes a place of emotional honesty, not emotional hiding. This kind of communication takes self-awareness. It takes knowing what you're feeling in the first place. Many people have been trained to suppress emotion, to stay logical, to stay in control. But emotional intelligence invites us to feel with control, not to be ruled by emotion, but to honor it, understand it, and share it constructively. It's also about timing. Emotionally intelligent people don't wait until they explode to communicate. They check in with themselves. They speak up when something feels off, even if it's small, because they know that unresolved feelings don't disappear, they build up. If you don't express them when they're manageable, they'll erupt when they're not. But perhaps most importantly, they choose words that connect instead of divide. They don't say, you never care. They say, I feel unimportant when you forget things we've talked about. That shift from blame to feeling makes all the difference. It invites understanding rather than defensiveness. It creates a dialogue instead of a standoff. When we learn to communicate our feelings, not just the facts, We create relationships where people feel safe to be real, to show up with their joys, their fears, their mess. And that's where true intimacy lives, not in the data we exchange, but in the emotion we share. It's about how it makes the other person feel. And if your words help someone feel seen, valued, and safe, then you've already spoken the most important truth of all. There's a moment in every relationship where something happens. You feel hurt, disappointed, maybe even betrayed. And in that split second, you have a choice. You can react or you can respond. The difference may seem small, but it changes everything. Reacting is easy. It's instant. It comes from a place of instinct, emotion, and ego. Someone says something that stings, and before you even realize it, the words are flying out of your mouth. A sarcastic jab, a raised voice, a cold silence. Reaction doesn't wait to understand, it just strikes back. And most of the time, it leaves both people feeling worse than when it started. But emotionally intelligent people have trained themselves to pause, that moment of space between what was said and what comes next, is where maturity lives. It's where they breathe, think, feel. They ask themselves, is what I'm about to say helpful? Is it necessary? Is it kind? And if it's not, they hold it. Not because they're suppressing emotion, but because they understand that emotions are information, not commands. They don't let anger be the driver, they let it be the signal. They feel it, acknowledge it, and then ask, what's really going on here? Because they know that responding requires reflection. It means slowing down enough to recognize what they're feeling and why. That level of self-awareness doesn't come from avoiding conflict. It comes from learning how to sit with discomfort and not let it take the wheel. Responding doesn't mean you're passive. It doesn't mean you let people walk over you or ignore your own needs. In fact, it's the opposite. Responding means you communicate with clarity and strength, but without cruelty. You speak your truth without turning it into a weapon. You say what needs to be said, but in a way that invites dialogue instead of shutting it down. Emotionally intelligent people know that a moment of reaction can create a wound that takes days, weeks, or even years to heal. They've seen the damage a careless comment can cause. They felt the regret of words spoken in anger. That's why they choose a different path. They understand that relationships aren't measured by how loud we can get when we're frustrated. They're measured by how thoughtful we can be when we're hurt. That doesn't mean it's always easy. In fact, it's incredibly hard. It takes emotional regulation, it takes practice, it takes humility to say, I need a moment before I answer this. Or even, I'm feeling triggered right now and I don't want to say something I'll regret. But that honesty, that self-awareness, it builds trust. It shows the other person that you value the relationship enough to protect it from your most reactive self. And here's the beautiful part. The more often you respond instead of react, the more you create a culture of calm in your relationship. A space where both people feel safe, where they know that disagreement doesn't have to mean disrespect, where they trust that emotions will be expressed but not weaponized. That's when relationships flourish, not because there's no conflict, but because there's a deep respect for how conflict is handled. So yes, reacting might feel satisfying in the moment, but responding builds something. It builds understanding. It builds emotional safety. It builds relationships that can last. Emotionally intelligent people don't get it right every time, but they try. They pause, they think, they choose their words like they matter because they know they do. And that pause, that's not weakness, that's wisdom. In relationships, boundaries are often misunderstood. Some people see them as walls, as ways to push others away. Others fear that setting boundaries means they're being selfish or unkind. But emotionally intelligent people know better. They understand that boundaries aren't about control, they're about care. And they set them without guilt because they know their value. Setting a boundary is simply saying, this is what I need in order to stay whole. It's not a punishment. It's not an ultimatum. It's a form of honesty. It says, I want this relationship to work, and this is what I need for that to happen. It takes strength to say that. It takes clarity, and it takes self-respect. Emotionally intelligent people don't apologize for knowing where their limits are. They don't shrink themselves just to keep the peace. They've learned, sometimes the hard way, That peace bought at the cost of your own well-being isn't peace at all. It's quiet resentment. It's hidden exhaustion. And eventually it breaks down even the strongest connection. So instead of allowing frustration to build, they speak up. They say, I need time for myself, or I'm not comfortable with that tone, or I will continue this conversation if it becomes disrespectful. And when they say it calmly, clearly, and without guilt, because they understand that a boundary isn't meant to shut people out. It's meant to keep the relationship safe and sustainable. The guilt often comes from a fear of disappointing others, of being seen as difficult. But emotionally intelligent people know that guilt is not always an accurate signal. Sometimes guilt just means you're doing something new, something healthy. And they're willing to sit with that discomfort if it means staying true to themselves. They've also learned that people who are meant to stay in your life will respect your boundaries. They might not always understand them at first. They might push back. People who truly care about you will adjust. They'll listen. And over time, they'll even feel safer with you because they'll know where they stand. Boundaries create clarity, and clarity builds trust. It's also important to know that emotionally intelligent people honor the boundaries of others too. They don't take it personally when someone says no. They don't assume distance means rejection. They understand that every person has a right to protect their energy, their values, and their time. Respecting someone else's boundary is one of the purest ways to show love. What's remarkable is that once you get used to setting boundaries, your relationships actually become richer, not colder. When people know you're being honest about your limits, they can trust that when you show up, it's real. You're not pretending. You're not resentful. You're fully present because you've given yourself permission to show up as you are. That's what emotionally intelligent people aim for. Not perfection, not approval, just authenticity. They don't need everyone to like their boundaries. They just need to live in a way that's aligned with their truth. And in doing so, they invite others to do the same. They've discovered that love without boundaries isn't love, it's obligation. And obligation breeds burnout. But love with boundaries, that creates room to breathe, room to grow, room to build something strong. So they set those boundaries, not with anger, not with guilt, but with grace. Because they know that protecting their peace isn't selfish, it's necessary. Not just for their own well-being, but for the health of every relationship they choose to nurture. We all mess up. We say the wrong thing, we raise our voice, we forget, we overlook, we hurt the people we care about. It's part of being human. But what separates emotionally intelligent people from the rest isn't that they never make mistakes. It's how they handle them when they do. Emotionally intelligent people take ownership. They don't shift blame. They don't minimize. They don't get defensive. They recognize that acknowledging the mistake isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. Because it takes humility to say, I was wrong. It takes courage to look someone in the eye and admit that your actions cause pain, that your words missed the mark, that you fell short. Most people want to be forgiven without doing the hard work of repair. They want to move on quickly. They want to skip the discomfort. But emotionally intelligent people stay in it. They're not afraid of the discomfort because they know it's where trust is rebuilt. They don't just say, I'm sorry, to smooth things over. They say it to make things right. They understand that a real apology has three parts: accountability, empathy, and change. First, they own the action. I messed up. I didn't handle that well. That was on me. No excuses, no but you also. Just responsibility. Then they move into empathy. I can see how that hurt you. I understand why you're upset. They don't try to defend their intentions. They focus on the impact. Because intentions don't always match reality. You can mean well and still cause harm. Emotionally intelligent people know that being a good person doesn't mean you never hurt anyone. It means you care enough to make it right when you do. That's why their apologies feel sincere. Because they come from a place of care, not guilt. From connection, not obligation. And then they follow through. They reflect. They grow. They ask, what can I do differently next time? Because without change, an apology is just a performance. But with change, it becomes a promise, a commitment to doing better. And when people see that you're not just saying the right things, but actually working to grow, they begin to trust again. Emotionally intelligent people also know how to apologize without making it about themselves. They don't say, I feel so bad. I can't believe I did that, in a way that shifts the attention away from the person they hurt. They keep the focus where it belongs, on the healing. They give space for the other person to be hurt without rushing them to feel okay again. Because they know that true accountability means allowing the other person to feel what they feel without needing to be immediately forgiven. They also forgive themselves. And that's key. They understand that making a mistake doesn't mean they're broken. It just means they're still learning. And the more they learn, the better they get, not just at apologizing, but at preventing the same mistake from happening again. Owning a mistake isn't about shame. It's about growth. Emotionally intelligent people aren't afraid of being imperfect. They embrace it. Because they know that every relationship worth keeping is going to require repair at some point. And the ability to repair well is one of the greatest relationship skills there is. So when they mess up, they show up with honesty, with humility, with heart. Not to be perfect, but to be real. And in doing so, they build something far more valuable than a spotless record. They build trust, they build safety, they build love that's deep enough to weather the truth. In the healthiest relationships, growth doesn't happen in isolation. It happens together. Two people evolving side by side, not trying to control each other, not trying to mold the other into someone they're not, but supporting each other as they each become more fully themselves. Emotionally intelligent people understand that love isn't about ownership. It's not about fixing, shaping, or directing someone else's life. It's about walking alongside them, being a witness to their journey, not the architect of it. And that distinction matters. Because the moment you start trying to control someone is the moment the relationship stops feeling safe. Control often hides behind good intentions. I just want what's best for you. I'm only trying to help. But emotionally intelligent people know that love isn't about knowing what's best for someone else. It's about trusting them to figure it out. It's about being there when they stumble, not preventing them from ever falling. Because real growth comes from the struggle, from the learning, from the choice. When two people grow together, they create space for each other to change. They expect it, they welcome it, because they know that no one stays the same. Life will shape you. New dreams will form. Old habits will fall away. And if the relationship is rigid, if it only works when both people stay exactly as they were on day one, they won't last. Emotionally intelligent people know this. That's why they value flexibility, curiosity, openness. They ask questions. What are you learning about yourself lately? What's been inspiring you? Is there something you're craving more of in life right now? They don't panic when the answers change. They don't take it personally. They see growth as a shared adventure, not a threat. And because they're growing too, they meet their partner with empathy and understanding. They know what it feels like to evolve. They know how hard it can be, and they offer encouragement, not control. Control often comes from fear of losing someone, fear of change, fear of being left behind. But emotionally intelligent people don't let fear make their choices. They don't try to keep someone small just so the relationship stays comfortable. They believe that love is big enough to hold growth. That when two people are committed to becoming better, not just for each other, but for themselves, the relationship becomes stronger, not weaker. They also let go of the illusion that they know how someone should be. Because the truth is, the more you try to control someone, the more they will hide from you. They will shrink. They will say less, share less, be less of themselves. And that kind of closeness isn't intimacy, it's compliance. It's not built on trust, it's built on fear. Emotionally intelligent people want more than that.